So there is a state forest near where I live, and I take my dog on walks there, like all my neighbors do. Though to do that this year, we all have to walk past a big sign at the entrance that says, "This state forest is closed for the whole year." Because Massachusetts is so broke this year, they're just not paying to staff and maintain a bunch of the state forests and parks and ponds, including the one by my house. Well, ironically, my little nearby state forest only exists today because of the last time that we were this broke, the Great Depression, when the government of Franklin Roosevelt decided that they wanted to put people to work and stimulate the economy by creating a civilian conservation corps that would hire people. They hired 100,000 people in Massachusetts alone to build the roads and plant the forests and construct the campgrounds and the dams and the bridges that gave the people of my state something great then that frankly is still really great now, generations later, even if we can't have rangers there this year. The documentary filmmaker Ken Burns puts this little piece of the creation of our national parks in perspective in his new beautiful miniseries, which is called The National Parks, America's Best Idea. Check it out.
Over the course of the Depression, more than 3 million men would find work at one time or another with the Civilian Conservation Corps. They would build more than 97,000 miles of fire roads in national forests, combat soil erosion on 84 million acres of farmland, and plant 3 billion trees, more than one-half the total reforestation accomplished in the nation's history. During that time, some $218 million would be pumped into projects solely within the national parks, including trails and buildings that remain to this day.
The Depression is a golden age because the National Park Service is a federal agency, and it's going to get all of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's "let's rebuild the nation" dollars. And the budgets of the National Park Service soar. And as the National Park Service looks at projects that could put people to work, Congress agrees, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt agrees. And the National Park Service suddenly finds itself swimming in money relative to what it had in the 1920s.
We are definitely in an era of building today. The best kind of building. The building of great public projects for the benefit of the public and with the definite objective of building human happiness at the same time.
Building human happiness at the same time. Big tracts of beautiful land set aside from private exploitation, not only for public use and for conservation, but as a repository, a preserve, a safe-kept locket of what our country is and the fact that it belongs to all of us together. What a good idea. The National Parks, America's Best Idea, starts Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern on PBS. And Ken Burns is here with us now to talk about it. Ken Burns, congratulations, and thank you so much for being here. I'm geeking out that you're here.
On the way around.
Oh, thank you. Well, congratulations. You have to be very proud of this.
We're very, very excited. We've spent 10 years working on it, 6 shooting. We've been to places where you think someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, buddy, are you getting paid for this? Come this way."
Yeah.
But building human happiness, you know, that's what governments are supposed to do. And we're now in an argument that governments are essentially bad. There was a time when the government stepped in and made things better in every single way, that we could bring jobs and money and a sense of cohesion. And that's what the parks, they thrived during the Depression, not just because they got the first shovel-ready stimulus dollars of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, but because they brought Americans together. And I think they still can do that. The idea is still durable, it's still flexible, it's still changing and evolving, just like all men are created equal meant all white men are property free of debt. We started off by saving natural scenery, and now we save a lot more. Manzanar, Shanksville, all these places that reflect a complicated past, a past that we're in the screaming that goes on talk radio, we ignore today. But it's in our national parks. They're the repositories of us, not just the grand geological story.
And what does that, I think that expansion of the idea of what we preserve and protect and decide to pay for the upkeep of as a nation, that expanding to be not just the beautiful places, not just where Half Dome is, but also the place where we had slave cabins and the internment camps. What does the expanding of that idea of what we protect say about what we value in common?
That's exactly right. I mean, we co-own all this land, so therefore we co-own the beautiful spots, but we have to own our history well and own up to it as well. So Central High School, still a working inner-city high school in Little Rock, Arkansas, the place where in 1957 the crisis of school desegregation crystallized, is a unit of the National Park Service. So is Manzanar, where Japanese-American citizens were interned. So were the slave cabins that made the comfortable life of the plantation owner possible. All of these places we've been willing to include in our idea of who we are. I know of no other country on earth that is willing to look at that dark past, and yet we sort of now reduce everything to sort of this dialectical preoccupation. It's red state or it's blue state, it's black or white, it's male or female, it's in or out. And the park's right there, our best idea.
On the idea of building human happiness, one of the things that I think is interesting about the reception of this documentary of yours compared to the other ones is that people are reading an ideological text into this, and it's because we have very much romanticized. We sort of have come up with this great fable that we tell ourselves about how we can pursue human happiness and our government should not restrict us from that. But the other part of the American dream is that our government believes that policy can advance human happiness while protecting freedom.
Exactly, it always has. The Homestead Act, the Land Grant College Act, these national parks. This was an activist government going in and not intruding on individual rights, but expanding them. And that's what the parks tell us about. This is a bottom-up story of regular people who fell in love with a place from every conceivable background. It's also the story of the richest of us, not hoarding the money in some greedy, selfish way, you know, like Ayn Rand. This is people saying, my God, we own beautiful scenery. Shouldn't everyone have access to it? That's Theodore Roosevelt. That's the naturalist Charles Shelton. That's Stephen Mather, the first director of the Park Service. These are people who are the elite, the richest people in the nation who sort of counterintuitively say, let's share it with everybody. I mean, this is a great story that's not only bottom up, but top down, and it meets in the middle in the most spectacular landscapes on Earth, which we all co-own. But think about what would happen if there were no national parks, you know? The Grand Canyon would be lined with mansions, and we'd never see that view. The Everglades would have long since been drained and be filled with tract housing and all sorts of ugly development. Yosemite, one of the most beautiful valleys on Earth, would be a gated community. Yellowstone would become Geyser World, something like that. We're talking about the difference between Pottersville and Bedford Falls. And we choose in It's a Wonderful Life to live in Bedford Falls. We reject Pottersville, but yet so much of the arguments today are, wait a second, that selfishness is very much what America is about. You know what? It's not what we're about. We're about sharing these things in common. It's about commonwealth, which is a wonderful idea, and not socialism. Because if it's socialism, then the people you call at 3 a.m. when your house is on fire, that's socialism. And the people who are in Afghanistan risking their lives, that's socialism. And the people who are picking up your trash, that's socialism too.
And we're so afraid of that word that we can't even we can't talk constructively about government without butting up against it at this point. We will get over that. We're just having a national tantrum, I believe.
Yeah, a little hiccup.
Ken Burns, it's such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
The miniseries is called The National Parks, America's Best Idea. It is a 12-hour-long series that's worth every single minute of your time. It premieres this Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern on PBS.